You're listening to The Moose and the Loose, your 10 minutes action-packed financial podcast with your host, Mike Yahoo. Hey, what's up, Market Moose? Mike from The Moose on the Loose. Happy Wednesday. All right, so today we are talking about the tax-free savings account, so TFSA. I get a lot of questions about what is the best type of asset or what is the best strategy to use with a TFSA. This account is literally a marvel. It's like the best investment account ever, right? You put money in and the concept of taxation completely disappear. I mean, it's not entirely true. We're going to get there in a second. There are like some ways that you could get taxed on it. But in general, you don't have to pay a dime in taxes. And now you can put $7,000 a year plus the years before. So we're around like $100,000 you can put in your TFSA since inception, and it's going to continue to grow. So even if you're like 18 today, you're starting to invest, that's like $7,000 you can put in that account. It's going to grow over time. The contribution will also increase over time. So it's just amazing, right? It is like maybe in like by the time that you retire and you pass away, you will likely have hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $1 million in your TFSA, maybe more than $1 million. And that will all go tax-free, regardless if it goes to your spouse or to your heirs. So that's just amazing. So how can you benefit from it from like the best way possible? So let's think about options, right? Fixed income. So GICs, bonds, preferred shares, they offer higher interest rates. It makes a lot of sense to put them there because you don't pay anything in taxes. So having like a 4% or 5% bonds or GIC there, that 5% is free of taxes. Gonna make sense. So yes, we could put fixed income into the TFSA regardless of the type of fixed income. What about growth stocks? Oh, okay. Growth stocks. That's interesting. So you buy a company at $100 and then 10 years later, it's worth $1,000 per share. So tenfold. Amazing. And all that big capital gain, no taxes on it. And actually, fun story. I've met with people that filled their TFSA with like more speculative stocks like Spotify, for example. Not Spotify, sorry, Shopify. Shopify several years ago. And then during the pandemic, when it skyrocketed, sold most of their shares. Huge capital gain there, but no tax on it. So they've built amazing TFSA account. So that would make sense too, right? So you don't want to pay any big capital gains. So again, growth stocks, fixed income, all make sense. What about high interest savings account or those ETFs that are like mimicking the same type of like high yield paid on secured cash. So you want to park your money in a safe place. The interest that is being paid, it would be tax-free. Again, would make a lot of sense. So if you're thinking about buying a house in the next 2 years, well, of course, there are like other types of accounts that you should consider first if you're a first home buyer. But if not, to build additional liquidity, TFSA could make a lot of sense. So that's great. So no taxes on interest rate. I'm all for it, right? What about US stocks? And this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. And this is what I told you at the beginning of this show. The tax-free savings account, like, make the concept of taxation completely disappear. But there's a small but here. If you have US dividend paying stocks, there will be a 15% withholding tax on the dividend. So not on the capital gain, but if you're receiving $1,000, you'll have actually your broker is going to take right away $150 as withholding taxes and ship it back to Uncle Sam. So you might not want to do that, especially if you focus on high yielding US stocks. So stocks that are paying above 4%, then it would make a big difference. So overall, besides high yield US dividend stocks, pretty much everything would be a good fit for the TFSA because, I mean, you just avoid taxation. So capital gain, interest, even dividend growth investing would also make sense there. So what to do at this point? Well, it all comes down to what is your strategy? What is your goal with that account specifically? So if you're using your TFSA for retirement as another type of account that you can contribute to on top of your RSP or your pension plan, or maybe you have like real estate, rental properties, you're buying an annuity, and then you're thinking, well, I could also contribute to my TFSA, which totally makes sense. So TFSA for your retirement, then you should definitely consider a long-term strategy. By long-term, I mean decades. So stop thinking about like 5 years. I'm thinking about technically when you do retirement planning, in many, of course, it's like case by case, so don't take that as a financial advice. But in most cases, withdrawing from your TFSA should be last. So you should tackle your non-registered account, then your registered account. There's a mix of like pension, government benefits, and then withdrawing from your RSP or your RIF. But the TFSA should continue to grow tax-free, kind of like forever in an ideal world, or at least until you pass away, or it's the last account, because there are no taxes in it. So you don't want to withdraw from this one until you are forced to. So very long-term strategy, super important. And again, if it's for a different type of goal than retirement, if you're planning on making a big purchase in the next 2 years, investing in the stock market for 2 years, that's a little bit closer to gambling than anything else. I would probably suggest that you consider having more fixed income or high interest rate savings accounts or stuff like that. And using the TFSA would be perfect because you put the money there, you know it's there, it's going to grow tax-free, so you preserve your buying power and then you can withdraw from it. So again, making a good point. But I would not necessarily put that up front unless this is your short-term goal. So for a retirement perspective, definitely go for the strategy that you've been using for all your other accounts. You know, when you look at your TFSA, you should not assess it by itself. You should look at the global picture. This is what I do at Dividend Stocks Rock, actually, when I build my portfolios on DSR Pro. The great thing is I can have a global view. So all my accounts, non-registered, registered, Smith Maneuver, Lira, RSP, TFSA, name it, my spouse account. So I can like put like 12 accounts if I want, 20 accounts if I want. And I have one single global view and I can make combinations. So I can look at all my portfolios, all my spouse portfolios in 2 separate global views, which makes my life a lot easier. And from that global view, you can do optimization. So you look at all your stocks or all your ETF, all your assets that have been invested. So of course, you want to protect tax as much as possible. So maybe that all your US assets that pays dividend should probably be put into a RSP first and then in a TFSA. It's not the end of the world to pay 15% withholding taxes, especially if you have low yield, high growth stocks in your TFSA. So, for example, for the RESP, for the paid the children's tuition, I've put a lot of my money into Apple like 10 years ago. That made a lot of sense. I didn't care about paying like 15% withholding tax on my RESP, mostly because the growth provided by this low yield, high growth company was a lot better. So instead of like buying Royal Bank, I went for Apple, and then Apple made a lot more money than Royal Bank. So that is one way to see it. So long story short, the TFSA should not have an impact on your strategy. Your strategy should have an impact on your TFSA. So go do a global view and then reallocate your assets according to the characteristics of each account. So for the RSP, then it would make a lot more sense to put your US stocks there first and then the TFSA second. For the TFSA, you can put everything there because that makes sense. But keep in mind that this portfolio alone will likely live for decades as opposed to some other of your portfolio. So you might want eventually, when you get to retirement, build a small copy of your portfolio, overall portfolio in your TFSA, because this one will continue to stick to your strategy, grow along the way, and probably never be sold until you pass away. So that would be the perfect scenario. So thinking about long term is definitely more important than debating if you should put GICs, capital gain stock, or dividend paying stocks in your TFSA. So that's all I'll have to say about a TFSA. I hope that it will help you to shape your portfolio a little bit more. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please take 2 seconds, go on Apple Podcasts, go on Spotify, give me a 5-star rating, share that podcast with one of your friends, with a family member that is interested about investing. Just help me share the knowledge and share the wealth. That's going to be just nicer, and to see this community growing. So, right, Moose, that's enough for today. Take good care. And tomorrow I'll be a little bit late for my recording for 2 reasons. Tonight I'm going to watch Canada beat Sweden at Bell Center for the Four Nation face-off. It's going to be amazing. And tomorrow I'm going to review TELUS numbers versus Bell. So you don't want to miss it. But of course, it's not going to be published around 7 in the morning. I'll probably be still sleeping at that time, but it's going to come in the morning for sure. All right, take good care, and don't forget to stay invested. Hey, welcome to the disclaimer. If you're listening to The Moose and the Loose, you cannot really expect me to give you buy or sell recommendation or financial advice, right? You're here for fun, you're here for information and some entertainment. But I am not your financial advisor, I am not your broker, so therefore I'm not liable if you're losing money after listening to the podcast. If you're looking for some advice, go see a professional. If not, you can enjoy the show and do your due diligence after it.